It's the purple mat today, so some crafty stuff. I'm not going to be doing a scratch build though, or even kit bashing, even though I start off with a sprue. What I'm going to do today is show you how I've worked out the cleanest and the easiest way to do silicone moulding with liquid silicone. So I'm going to try and replicate a few of these parts out of a kit for Greeblies. I've picked a few of these, so I'll prep those and then create a mould. Here's what I'm going to use. Sellotape, double-sided, a little pair of scales. The random containers that are useful. One of these tongue depressors for stirring things. Also one of these scoops. Now, this is a 30mm scoop, 30mm, and that was free as well. Well, it was in like a protein shake, that sort of thing. I've also found I use these little disposable pipette syringes. They're really useful to have. Now gets to the important bit, the silicone. This is the silicone I use. I buy it in a kilogram tin called Mouldcraft GP-RTV silicone. It's white, and this costs me in the UK about £20. Sometimes there's a delivery fee. Sometimes they have a special offer on their eBay store where you can get it without delivery, and that's when I look out for it. And I found if I watch this item on eBay, every so often they send me an email with an offer on it. And when you buy that, you get this little hardener as well, this red stuff that mixes in on it, which is what we use the pipette for. Cheapest glue gun money can buy. I bought this because I accidentally bought a low melt glue. Tried to put that through my hot melt glue gun, and boy did that make a mess. So I bought this one, which was about £3 I think, which is rubbish, but for what I need it's fine. And the only other thing that I use, and honestly you'll get great results from this, is this foam board, feather board stuff. You can buy these in A4 sheets. I bought A3 sheets, a few pound for a few of them, and this is to actually make the moulds. The other thing I'm going to use in this, I am going to use a vacuum chamber, all right, but that's something I've only recently had, and you can get good results without it. So obviously a vacuum chamber and a vacuum pump, that's cost me a bit more money. I'm going to try and do one without the vacuum chamber and one with the vacuum chamber and compare it afterwards. That might work, it might not. We'll see at the end of the video. Alright, so here are the things I'm going to mould. This is going to be a little bit fiddly because I'm actually just going to do moulds against a flat surface, because these are going to be stuck on things. It's this bit that I want, it's not this back bit. And likewise, I think I'm going to do some moulds of these, and they've got these holes in the back. So the first thing I'm going to do is take these off the sprue and sand it down so the back is flat. So let's do that. So what I'm trying to do here is make it so that the piece lies very flat against the foam board, because what I don't want is any of the silicone going into the bottom of the piece. I'm going to fill the piece up with something else later on, but the flatter it is, the better that the mould will be around the edges when we pour it. So now I've got these filled with blue tack. The blue tack isn't to stick it to the base. The blue tack's just to try and remove some of the air, to make these lighter and to stop the silicone getting into the place where the blue tack is. I'm now going to get some of my foam board, and I'm going to make two little moulds which I'm going to put these in. And I want to try and optimize the space so there's the least silicone used, but also of course I want to do two little moulds so I can do one in the vacuum chamber and one not. So that's one of them, and I'm allowing a little bit around the edge to also stick a little wall of foam board, but that's about enough for that one. Make sure I allow enough space for an extra bit of silicone and to put the walls in. The base bit doesn't matter if it's not square, but your walls, it's important that they're nice and square. So that's one of them, and let's do the other one. Now none of these are very big, So the walls don't need to be that high, in fact probably about 1 centimetre. I mean that one, yeah, a little bit bigger than that maybe, so not that big, but I'm going to need to use a ruler for that. I find it easier to do this standing up, so forgive any shadows. That should do. So if you're following along, I've just put my glue gun on again. Now the temptation is to immediately glue all of these on. How I do it is I put some double-sided tape down on this board first so that I can secure the parts down. Now I can lay them on the board. Alright, now if you've sanded them properly you shouldn't really see any gaps underneath there. Okay, so glue gun at the ready then. So first of all let me measure off that width there. And we can assume that that width will be the same the other side. So now the first one's easy. You've got to allow a space between the part and the walls. So now that one is for that, but I'm not going to put that on yet. So these are going on the inside, so I'll measure these first. And then this one, in fact, let me do one for the other side as well. So an L shape of glue this time. L bead of glue. Now if when you put it on you haven't got enough space, just immediately pull it off and redo it. That's okay on that one. And then the other one's a bit more tricky because you have to do that side there, that side there, and then the underside as well before the other one cools off. That's it, so just grab it on quick. Alright, now the only other thing that I do with this to try and prevent leaks, and this works really well and it works with the low melt, you just put a bead around all of the joints on the outside, and you'll find that if you've already got some glue coming out of the joints you can melt it back in with the hot tip of the glue gun, and then that reduces the chance of silicone leaking out. I'm working hard on that one, there's a little bit of a gap there, so just in case, and then I can do the same underneath that bit. Alright, so that's one done, and I don't need to talk over me doing the other one, which will be exactly the same. Okay, so you see I've tried to minimise the surface area really, while leaving a couple of millimetres around the edge of the mould. Just stops it distorting. I mean, I'm not trying to get these perfectly copied. I'm not going to use the pieces for their original intention. The only thing that slightly worries me, you've got these two dots here. Now I don't really need those, so I could have just filled them with blue tack, but I'm just going to leave them and see what happens. You can always cut them off in the silicone afterwards, or just try and make sure the silicone goes down into there and I'll see what the results are. Alright, so now it's the silicone bit, so I'll get ready for that. So nearly all ready now. Now you see this that was 30mm. If you sort of compare that, if you took the curves out and added that square, that little bit is probably about 30mm. That's what I'm aiming to do with little pieces, to minimise the amount of this. Probably with that, that's probably going to need about 50mm altogether. Sometimes though the hardest bit of this is opening the can. I also have some paper towels ripped off and ready in the vicinity, just so that if I need them I don't have to touch loads of stuff to get them off the roll. So I've got 3 sheets of that paper towel. I don't wear a mask or anything for this. This Doesn't really smell bad, but it's best not to get it on your fingers. So I'm just being careful here. Notice I've got 3 pots. I've got an original pot that I'm going to mix in, and then I've got 2 pots because one of them I'm going to put in the vacuum chamber and one of them isn't. The larger one I'm going to put in the vacuum chamber. I think you'll see it doesn't really matter for this, but the larger one I need because the vacuum will bubble the silicone up before it pops again, but I'll try and show that on video as well. So start off is a mixer cup which I put everything in. Turn it on, make sure that's at 0, so yeah, it's allowing for the cup. I've got to work out how to open this again. Oh, that looks lovely. I have my little waste pot of stuff there. I have my stirrer stick, which I try and keep clean so that none of the mixed stuff goes into the fresh. So I'll get those together. Grab as much of that as I can. Wait for it to dribble off the bottom a little bit. So that should be about 30 ml. There'll be some on the bottom as well and some we won't be able to get out the cup. But once that stops dripping, you can do that. Transfer it across. So this will be approximately 30 ml. But you lose some in the cups as well when you're stirring it and you're mixing it. You can never get it all out of the cups and the measures. So you're putting the stick underneath it, stops it dripping onto your lovely purple mat. Okay, once I've got the bulk of that out, then I can just put that and my stick into my little waste pile there, and the white will drip off that over time and go in the bottom, so you can reclaim it. I've done that when I need little bits. Finished with this now, so I'll put that away straight away so there's no accidents. Ratio is 100 to 2 normally. Now that was 76, it's just gone off. I'm glad I remembered that. So I've got to divide 76 by 50 to give me 100 to 2 ratio. It wasn't 76, it was 71, so 1.42 grams. Now the best way I've found of doing this is by using one of these disposable pipettes, which again you can reuse because you're only using them for the red stuff. So let's measure 1.42 grams. This stuff is messy if you get it anywhere. Oh, well, 150, that's fine. This is where you introduce the bubbles. Anyway, so that's the first mix. Once you've done the first mix, you should transfer it to a second container. So you've seen the bubbles in there started to come out anyway. So now I want to transfer about half of this to the other cup. This will be the one that's not going through the vacuum chamber, and all I'm going to do is start to pour it. But try and get a nice thread, so as soon as it begins to drop and I've got it on target, I'm trying to do this with it. You see, you can just about see the angle. It's best to not go over the objects. I didn't have much choice, but you let it creep over the objects. So see, I'm just trying to fill it in on one corner. So what I'm doing it by dropping it from a height is trying to remove as many bubbles as I can as it's going in. This means that you don't have to use a vacuum chamber to pull the bubbles out. That's doing well now. Looks like I judged the amount quite well. So that one's done. Just put the rest into the other cup that's going in the chamber. I'll transfer that to the vacuum chamber. See, I've got bubbles in it at the moment, and we'll see what I can get out with the vacuum. Oh, getting near the top. No! Oh, it just burst in time. Forgot to press record on this after I'd moved the camera. Just poured that into the other mould. I have to remember that the smaller mould has gone through the vacuum and the larger mould is one that I use without the vacuum. See, that surface looks much smoother. I don't know whether you can see it on here. So there's a lot of bubbles on the top of that, but the bubbles will come out over time if you haven't mixed it too thick, and if it doesn't cure too quickly, you'll find that the bubbles will come out of this. If you've got some silicone that's left over from last time which has cured, you can cut them up into little bits, and if you've undermixed the amount that you need, you can pop those in after you've poured it, and it brings the volume up and the silicone doesn't float, which is nice. Even on this one that I degassed, there's still some bubbles coming out of it, and that's bubbles that have been trapped underneath the mould or in the mould somewhere that are just working their way out, and they will do over time. But what I'm hoping in the morning when I look at these is that they'll both be flat and there'll be no bubbles in it. Just overnight these had set and they were okay to the touch. If I touched them, nothing came up on my fingers. It's interesting to see if you can just see that where it reflects off the light, how smooth this one is. Now that was the one that went through the vacuum chamber, and then this is the one that we're doing on a budget without going through the vacuum chamber. I don't know whether you can see, but it has more of a mottly surface. It's fine some bubbles to come up, because even if there's no bubbles in the material, the air trapped around the pieces, so some will always come out. Hopefully this one has still given us a good mould. So this is the exciting bit. Now when it's a little mould, you can sometimes get this out without destroying the mould, and I like to keep the moulds as well. Mix up too much silicone, it's useful to have another mould lying around that you can just pour off onto it. I'm not going to be able to get that I don't think with my fingers. Oh, maybe. I'm always quite excited when the pieces are still left stuck behind. Alright, so that's come out well. Now let's have a look at this. Now I can't see many bubbles in that. And that one has come out pretty perfect. So that's the one that didn't go in the vacuum chamber, and although there was still going to be gas in the silicone when we poured it, must be that most of it has come to the surface. And that's what's good when you have silicone that cures slowly, because it does give the chance for some of the air to get out, and pouring from a high level was also good for that. So that's the one that I thought might not work, but it works fine. Let's see if I can get this one out. Of course that mould, I can reuse that mould if I want to for a pour over, so I'll keep that, won't throw that away. Lovely, look at that. Okay, so again reusable without even having to glue those, so I'll keep those. And that's come out great. That has been a success. So as you see, you can get away with this without using a vacuum pot if you're careful, and when it's for small amounts, and as long as your silicone doesn't catch quickly. Let's cast them. I'm going to try a UV one. That's a good way of just getting a really quick result out of the mould. So let's try that. I think I'm going to try this one. So here's my UV resin. That'll do for now. I can always top this up afterwards when I've set it, so there's a bit of a dent in that at the moment, and you can leave this around for a while and hopefully it will pull out any bubbles. I mean, I can't see any bubbles in when you're using the clear stuff. Oh, there's one little bubble there on its way out. It's reaching the surface. Obviously it's easier to do this in flat moulds, and it's easier to do it when you've got clear resin. I've just noticed I forgot to cut the edges off the mould. Something else Robert Talone describes is if you just get a pair of scissors and gently cut these off. Doesn't really matter on there, it's cosmetic, but on the bottom side, if you get rid of that, you ensure that it's going to lie flat. I forgot to do that in my haste. So now I'm going to zap it. I think I'm going to go, as this is quite deep, I'm going to go for the nail UV machine. These aren't as expensive as they look either. So I'm going to give that blast. So I'll give it a blast for 90 seconds, then I'll probably turn it around, give it a blast for another 90 seconds. Then when you get them out, often the underside also isn't cured. So if you get them out and just let them drop onto a surface, then you do the same thing again, give them another treatment again, and then that will cure them. So I'll come back when that's done. So these have all come out great. I've done a few more, but had difficulty filming them and illuminating them because they are see-through, and they look the nicest when they were underneath this in the UV light. So there are all my Greeblies. This was one where I just mixed the UV resin with some pigment dye. It worked well. So there are all my Greeblies from my beautiful Greebly generating devices. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you like, please subscribe. Sorry it was a bit of a long one, but that was the process, and all that's left to say is bye.